This podcast is brought to you by Podcast Nation.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Welcome to Nirvana Sisters podcast, where we take the intimidation out of well-being and beauty to help you achieve your highest state, your nirvana. We are sisters-in-law and your hosts. I'm Amy Sherman.
And I'm Katie Chandler. So let's get into some real conversation. Welcome back to the show, Nirvana Sisters family. This week, we continue with Jessica Maguire, talking about vagal tone and repairing your nervous system. In this part 2 episode, we get advice for helping to regulate children's nervous system, especially children with maybe autism, ADHD, and so on. Amy gets real-time advice on her vestibular migraines and how it could potentially be tied to the nervous system. Jessica also helps us understand what different dysregulations look like for different people and the various ways that we can regulate our nervous system. We hope you enjoy this super interesting episode with Jessica Maguire. We found it to be so educational and really, really interesting. It's a completely different way of looking at how to manage one's stress. It's a new way that not a lot of people talk about, and we think it could be really, really helpful to so many people. So we hope you enjoy.
I have a question about, I guess, a symptom of not being regulated could be headaches or dizziness, because I have vestibular migraines, if you know what that is. And they were really bad a couple of years ago. They're much better now. But is that related? Because I have a feeling it probably is. Like, I was off and probably needed to do things to help it. But are you familiar with that?
Yeah, there's some good research that shows there is some connections there because of the vagus nerve. It connects, like, it's a cranial nerve, which you would link cranial nerves with other cranial nerves with migraines. So particularly with the vestibular system. So as it comes up around the ears, it's connecting with other cranial nerves there. So they've shown that lower vagal tone can present as things like tinnitus, headaches, migraines, that kind of thing as well. But also there'd be the inflammatory link. So the vagus nerve can influence our level of inflammation. And that's, if with low vagal tone, we sometimes see these chronic things come up, such as migraines.
Is there anything that you can do that, like if someone, so for Amy example, what could she do to help with her vagal tone now that you know she has the vestibular migraines? Maybe the listener is hearing this and they're saying, "Oh, I'm on the higher end." What's something that they could do that could help them? I saw that you mentioned play on your Instagram page, playing like a kid again, like these little things that we can do at home. Does meditating help? What are any things that our listeners could do?
Sure. So it would depend as well. I would be if like Amy and I were to look further, we would say, well, looking at what state she would spend most of her time in really triggered her nervous system. Does she have dysregulation, or is she experiencing a lot of anxiety at that time? So again, I would be looking in that framework of the window of tolerance to see where where she'd be resting. Play is one of the best things because you are working with your nervous system in the state where you have that sympathetic nervous system coming in, or the same energy that leads to fight or flight is that mobilizing energy that is in play. But with play, the vagal brake or the vagus nerve is still working. So you feel excited, energized, you feel that mobilization through your body, but it's not moving into a threat because you've got the vagal brake there. So play is great. It can be with kids. I mean, if as an adult you find things with certain friends playful, like comedy, It could be just taking funny photos. It could be going and doing something like a hike together and, really having that good laugh, banter. But reciprocity, where it's back and forward, is really what helps, because when you say, it's the same with speaking and listening. When you talk, your vagal brake releases slightly. When you listen, it comes back on slightly. So whilst we can say, okay, let's do these things that are inside the window, where our nervous system learns and things will change is when you actually have some stress in your nervous system. So that's where we want to, for some people, excitement gets interpreted as anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like almost like this, oh my God, this is so great. Ooh, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so many things, but I can't keep it in check. So then it turns into like a racing heart and things. So we do want to use it when, if we were to say back to the answer to your question before, if say Amy knew that she moved into anxiety whenever she went to family functions, let's say, for instance, well, that's the time where we'd want to be saying, okay, how can she keep herself just under that edge of her window without moving into anxiety? Now, that could be that she holds her husband's hand, or that she looks at him and they take like a moment to be like together. It could be that if she checks in with her shoulders and her jaw is clenched and she's holding like this, she goes, okay, I'm starting to notice that this is what I do as an automatic pattern. I'm going to undo that pattern and start to come back down. One of the things that I think is really helpful is using if-then statements. So it's like, if I go to the family function and I start to get anxious, I'm going to go outside for 1 minute and just like walk with my feet on the grass and really pay attention to those sensations. So whilst there's a lot out there that we can see that says this is going to help with the vagus nerve, it's not really that powerful unless we're experiencing stress and we teach our survival brain, which is the part that detects threat, to respond in a new way.
Right.
Otherwise, it's like, we can all be very chill while we're on a meditation cushion, but then leave and drive out into traffic and completely lose it.
That totally makes sense. So it's not trying to keep yourself calm all the time. It's knowing how to keep yourself calm in a stressful situation and having the tools and strategies to do that, which I think I've learned over time. And I think, that's a really important piece to it. Now, do people take, like in extreme cases, do people take medication to regulate their vagus nerve, or is it more just behavioral things?
So this is interesting, because when you look at what we call the gut-brain axis, that's how the vagus nerve communicates from the gut up to the brain. And a lot of what it's communicating is coming from the gut microbiome and what we'd call the enteric nervous system, which is all the nerves in the belly that they might call the belly brain. And so some recent studies have shown with taking things like, say, antidepressants that help to improve the level of serotonin, when the vagus nerve was cut, they stopped working. So it's interesting that we know that things like serotonin, taking those or taking antidepressants will help in the short term. That will help to improve people's mental health. But long term, it doesn't necessarily improve things. Mm-hmm. So is it that serotonin's helping improve the function of the vagus nerve and what's being communicated, or can we influence our own serotonin? So I think this is where it's useful to look at the vagus nerve as like this highway that's communicating what's happening between our gut and our brain. And we can also do a lot to change or rebalance like how the microbes are working, because they are what produce things like serotonin, GABA, which is an anti-anxiety neurotransmitter as well, and dopamine. So we can still have a big influence on the balance of our gut, and the vagus nerve will communicate that upwards. But in terms of medication specifically for the vagus, not really. It's more that the medication treats the end stage. So like inflammation, pain, people use proton pump inhibitors for the gut, but a lot of that can be poor vagal tone. So unfortunately, a lot of them probably just mask what's going on.
Yeah. And I think, culture, people will say, you hear it all over the place, like, oh, I'm stressed, I got to take a Xanax. You know what I mean? And like, that's very common, unfortunately. That is how people are coping with their stress, me included sometimes if I need to, right? And I think it's really important to figure out ways to not rely on something like that to kind of get you back into your zone, if you will.
Yeah, and I love that the tools that you were saying. It feels like it's kind of like mindfulness practices, like checking in. There's this book that I read to my children it's called I Am Peace, and it's just this little story all about this guy he's tuning into himself. Like right now, I can hear the wind and the trees bustling, and I can feel the grass underneath my feet, and it's like just kind of checking in, like you were saying, all right, my shoulders are really tense. Let me drop my shoulders. I'm breathing too fast or talking too quickly. Let me slow it down. So is that kind of a good way to sum it up? It's tuning into yourself in these moments of stress and recognizing these stress habits and kind of shifting them.
I think that's a big part of it, but for some people, paying attention to sensations who are already close to panic, that can make them worse. It's really, again, knowing where you are on that state. So, we hear a lot of like, just do breath work. If someone does breath work when they're panicked, they are going to just feel a million times worse.
Right.
It's a bit like saying, and I wish there was a simple answer to say it's just this, but the part that I keep coming back to, and people are like, but isn't there just like one or two things? And it's like, it's really not, because
no, of course. Yeah.
It depends on each person. But for some people that will help, in the ability to go, okay, I'm going to focus my attention on this, like that can certainly help. But for other people, it could be things like, I need to move my body, or I need to use ways where I'm out in nature, or I need other people, or it's having like this enormous toolkit that you can go to and say, this is going to work for me today. I mean, there's things with music that some people find regulating that doesn't involve paying attention at all to anything. It can just be having the music there. And they've shown that with children with autism, that has been a really useful way to engage the vagus nerve, and it's having good effects for bringing that nervous system regulation. So mindfulness is good. I guess the part that I just caution people with is if they are really dysregulated, mindfulness has shown that it can potentially make the dysregulation last longer, because you might be paying attention to, say, like a racing heart or butterflies in your tummy. And if you pay attention to that, it's almost like it's telling the brain there's danger. So this is where we need to know our system and what works, because I've worked with a lot of people who've had a history of like traumatic stress, and they just can't meditate. And they keep getting this message like, just meditate, just meditate. And it's like, well, it doesn't work for them. So it's a little bit like.
So those type of people need to find another method to help them get regulated, for example, exercise or play or something else. Yeah, I was going to say too, because Katie mentioned kids and you were talking about autism, et cetera. I was going to say, I'm sure this could be the case for many children, especially like teens, because, going through middle school or high school is stressful. They're just not able to identify that it could be off. And so what do you suggest for like kids who may have a dysregulated tone? Because I would say there's probably a lot. I mean, you hear of so many like mental health challenges with kids nowadays. So I'm just curious for our listeners, if they have kids they think that might have dysregulation and how they could help.
Sure. Yeah, it's very interesting. And a lot of the research has been with kids. So a lot of this stuff is so relevant. But it's helpful to look at babies aren't born with the ability to self-regulate. So they actually rely on parents to literally calm their nerves. Yeah. So the part of the vagus nerve that's that vagal brake, it's got like a electrical insulation around it. And that is formed, well, it's not formed up until we're about 3 or 4 years old. So for kids who are like premature or maybe don't get that really good co-regulation, they're more likely to experience anxiety. And there was even a study showing that adverse childhood experiences correlated with chronic illness later in life. So they followed these kids right through. So that's what just to reiterate, what happens early on in life is like setting up that person for the rest of their life. So spending time with co-regulation is really important. But that's what I would say is probably that main part is the co-regulation. So using the voice, using touch, soothing, like that will have a faster effect. And then a lot of with the things with kids, like I mentioned before, the research is really interesting with music. Like mid-frequency music has been shown to help kids access that part. But the back and forth of play will work really beautifully, even if that's like throwing a ball back and forth, like doing something where there's like let the excitement build, bring it back down. There's ways to, of course, get them to tune into like what's happening in nature, what's happening around, like we spoke about as well. And really, like if we were to say, okay, you know, my child is really up, I'm going to go out and discharge some of this energy. Or it might be if they're flat, like getting them to like use things like stomping or slowly bringing that energy back up. So you're really looking to down-regulate or up-regulate. The kids will always respond best with that co-regulation because their little systems are forming through it. I mean, even the centres in their brain to do with regulation form through that back and forth communication with parents.
Yeah, I was going to say, because earlier when we were talking about procrastination and like I'm thinking about my older son who's 15 and a bit of a procrastinator, but also has ADHD. So like sometimes he can be flat or like super lazy. But again, I don't know if he's lazy or he's just not like regulated and maybe he needs to like get up and do something, which a lot of times we'll say like get up and go outside. And then when he comes back in, he's like totally fine.
Yes.
So it's
a classic example.
Yeah.
Yes. And like getting in with people, I think, like, because if there's that flatness and procrastination, people tend to withdraw a little bit and not want to go and do anything. It just becomes like a cycle. So it's like for us, if we feel that flatness and that sense of, there's almost a little bit of a feeling of helplessness or hopelessness with it. But once we get back out, and it can be just even going to get a coffee or going to a park where there's a lot of people, that will help to bring the system back up for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it interesting. This was talking about Jackson, Amy's son. It just reminded me of what you were saying earlier, how people pick up on other people's dysregulations as well. Like in my house, if I'm stressed and like, you know, running around and reactive, the next thing I know, like, so are my kids. And then like my husband starts to get that way. And then the whole house gets really, you could just like feel the stress levels rise in the house. Yeah. So it's really interesting. So
Katie and I at our next family dinners, we're going to be like, okay, we're going to regulate our vagal tone now. And our kids are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Exactly. 100%.
It does happen. And I think it's like, we need to not be too hard on ourselves for, you know, getting stressed, because stress is not going to ever go away. Like it's always going to be there,
and it can work for you in some ways.
You know, I think that sense of getting out of our comfort zone in some ways, where we are on that edge of like, oh, this is scary, and then we can cope with whatever it is. We actually do strengthen our ability to stay regulated under stress. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's more, I love that when people understand this framework, they stop blaming themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's like with your son, if it's procrastination and underneath that is a sense of like he's, you know, feeling, particularly with ADHD, then changing the state will change that behavior. And this is why this stuff is so great for kids, but also we can give ourselves just a little bit of grace. Like, Katie, if you said from that year that you had, your nervous system learnt to be more sensitive to cues of danger because it was, having a hard time. But some of the time that means we just then unlearn it through using those practices where we show, okay, I'm scared, but if I can, and if that's what you're saying, like works for you, where you're like, okay, I can drop through my body, I can pay attention to what's here, and you just bring yourself down a little bit, even though it's still challenging, you in time teach your system not to be as sensitized. So it's an amazing dynamic.
I have a silly example, but I was very proud of myself last week because I had to get a root canal for the first time. I had it was one of those, I had really bad pain. And so I had to go to the dentist, and then he was like, you have to get a root canal, whatever. So I go to get the root canal. It was all on the same day. And as soon as I got it, they put something in my mouth and I felt like I couldn't swallow. And then I started panicking, and I noticed that my shoulders went up. And then I said to myself, okay, your shoulders are up, move them down, breathe. And it completely helped me and changed me. And I was telling my friend, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself that I got through it. Cause normally I'd be so anxious the whole time. I somehow managed to get through it because I just noticed that physical symptom of me raising my shoulders. That was just an awareness thing, but yeah.
Amazing.
Silly example, but probably relatable.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this is so incredibly fascinating to me, and I feel like I could personally pick your brain for hours, but I want to know really quickly if you could explain a little bit your program that you do, you work with your clients, and how our listener could get in touch with you to work with you.
Oh, great. Sure. So we have a few different programs. One that we have coming up very soon is our gut-brain axis program. So it's looking at specifically the gut and how that influences anxiety, depression, dysregulation, and also how we can rebalance that microbiome to improve the functioning of the vagus nerve. So that is a 6-week program. It's not really about having to go on a diet and overwhelming ways to change your life. We just have found through the science what works and put it into recipes so people can just integrate it, and it's matched to the states as well. So it's what works for you. That's one program. And then we also have a 2-hour masterclass that we run that is a good overall introduction and just gives you enough to go away, get practicing on your own, and learning to really widen that window that we spoke about.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be signing up for the 2-hour masterclass. It sounds great.
Where can people find you on Instagram? Because I know that you have a lot of really great videos and information that I found to be really helpful.
Oh, thank you. So our handle is repairing_the_nervous system.
I'll put it in our show notes, don't worry.
It's really long. But yeah, there's a lot over there. We do love to share a lot on Instagram. We found that our audience is very, very excited to keep learning more. So it's been a lot of fun to share this information with people over there as well.
Yeah, your content is great. It is. It's so, for the listener, it's so incredibly informative, and you give a lot of great tips and educational information that really helps break it all down. I love your content.
Thank you so much, Katie.
All right, so why don't we kick it into our wrap session? Amy, do you want to tip us off?
Yeah. So what is your favorite wellness or beauty hack?
I'm going to go wellness, just because I would say that beauty is not my area of expertise. Favorite beauty hack, wellness hack would have to be, I would definitely say the right people around would be the biggest key to wellness. So leaning into people for support, but also for play and for fun as well. So yeah, I would say that would be the biggest wellness.
I love that.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
The energy, right? Everyone's energy, you're picking up on it. All right, Absolutely. This next one, we call it the 5-minute flow. First of all, do they have Uber in Australia? You do, right? You have Uber
Yes.
there? Okay.
Not much. There's not much in our area. Like you often go to order them and there's just none.
Okay.
So you'll understand the
It's
question.
part of the flow, yeah. So you just
Okay.
got out of the shower and dried off. Uber just alerted you they're 5 minutes away. What's your quick beauty routine? What are your go-tos, your holy grails to get yourself ready and out the door and in that car?
For 5 minutes. Ooh. So I would definitely want to just do some fill-in brows, because if you've got polished eyebrows, you kind of feel like you've got your act together and you're really organized. And then probably just lots of, like something like a bronzer or an easy coverage that I could just rub on my face, but that still gave it a bit of a glow.
Nice.
Do
and then take the last one? Oh, sorry.
What'd you say?
No, I'm just thinking if there's anything else. 5 minutes, I think my time would be up if I had to do any more. So, yeah.
Those are good
All right,
go-tos.
The last one we want to know is, how do you maintain your daily nirvana?
I really think it's tuning into those rhythms of the nervous system that I was speaking about before. So just being aware that I tend to want to go, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And then it gets to like, whew, I'm overwhelmed here. So knowing that rather than pushing through, that's the time to actually take a break and get outside is probably my main thing. So where we live, it's not far to a river and it's only like a 2-minute walk, and I'll just go down, have a walk, and then be able to keep working. I think through wisdom, you kind of learn that your physiology is more powerful than your ability to keep trying to push. And so I listen to that physiology now instead of trying to override it. And that is how I would stay much more inside that window we talked about.
Yeah, that's the key for sure.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's like being in tune to your body on a level that I have never talked to somebody about. I mean, it really is like you must be so in tune and in touch with your body. I'm hypersensitive. I feel everything in my system all the time. It kind of drives me crazy, but at the same time, you can use it to your advantage. And I just feel like I could learn so much from you. So I'm signing up for your class. And I can't wait to learn more. So
this was amazing and so eye-opening. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Ladies, I've absolutely loved hanging out with you both. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. And I love that you were so enthusiastic to learn all about this. So thank you.
Yeah, I think our listeners are really going to appreciate this. Thanks for listening to Nirvana Sisters. For more information on this episode, check out the show notes, please subscribe, and leave us a review. Also, find us on Instagram at Nirvana Sisters. If you loved what you just listened to or know someone that would, please share it and tag us. Tune in next week for a fresh new episode of Nirvana Sisters. We'll continue to watch out for all things wellness so you don't have to. Bye.